This time, the story would revolve around the protagonist, a great wizard who, years ago, saved the world. Despite this, he ended up dying and reincarnated in the body of a student considered a complete failure, good at studies, but terrible at magic. As time passed, he demonstrated his true skill, leaving everyone impressed. He was the strongest man in that world and would have to save the planet once again from the new threats that were emerging. However, there was a problem. There were no more powerful mages. Everyone was too weak, even the most renowned mages with only a fraction of their original power. The story would follow Minato, the protagonist, once again facing the challenge of protecting the world. The anime began with Minato looking at himself in the mirror. A doctor declared his incredible speed of recovery. He had lost consciousness and fallen into a coma due to a traffic accident, but now he was completely healed, as if healed by sacred magic. In Minato's mind, everything made sense. His body was healing automatically thanks to sacred magic, but he had no memory of the accident. He thought his magical power had simply run out. A man appeared and asked what kind of magical power he was talking about. He explained that during the calamity, they fought terrible monsters. The man asked if he could know his name. Minato introduced himself and asked if it was 1970. But the man replied that it was 2002. He seemed to have lost his memory, as he had no idea what the current year was. The people around him didn't seem to lie, and soon he saw a television showing the year 2022. Curious, Minato looked at the device in a girl's hand and asked what kind of device it was. The man explained it was a tablet, but Minato didn't understand why it had come from the past. The man said the calamity had occurred 50 years ago and never returned. Startled, Minato asked where the monsters were now. The man replied that there were still some, but that the world was much more peaceful than before. In Minato's mind, if this were true, the world would finally have achieved peace. He then learned that Shika Minato, the true hero who had died in the great calamity 50 years ago, had sacrificed himself to save the planet. However, he wasn't really Shika Minato because he had died at that time. Therefore, he believed he had been reincarnated as Kusanagi Minato. Now, he wanted to understand what was happening. After a while, he finally reached his new room and managed to learn a little more about the boy's biography. His parents had died when he was still a child, and he was kicked out by his adoptive parents and sent to a boarding school. Since then, he had lived solely on the inheritance left by his parents. He reflected that, in his time, magic and reincarnation didn't exist, so it must be fate, or perhaps a coincidence. He also remembered being a member of the Magic Academy. In his mind, he wondered if it all really made sense. Suddenly, he received a call, but he didn't know who it was or what to do, so he simply threw his phone away. He heard that Minato had finally been released and was asked to come to the school, as he had no money. The next day, he finally arrived at school and realized that this magic school was something extraordinary. He was very excited, as being an adult going to school was unexpected, and seeing the magic people used made him curious. However, he soon wondered what that weak and useless magic was. In his mind, it was disappointing. The world had become a completely different place, something he couldn't accept. A novice from his time would do it 10 times better. There was no way those people were real magicians. Everything was so peaceful, and for him, magicians hadn't evolved, they had merely regressed. When he entered the classroom, he felt like he was going back in time and was excited. He even asked where his old friends were. Suddenly, a bully appeared behind him, questioning why he was ignoring his messages. Even though he was a failure, he had no right to act like that. Before Minato could respond, he was elbowed and had his desk thrown away, making him even more angry. The bully pointed his finger at Minato, calling him a loser and saying he was nothing more than common trash. Minato remembered that this was the same person who had called him that morning. He thought maybe he was his friend, but soon realized otherwise. When he finally remembered the bully's name, he realized they could become friends. The bully took the money from Minato's pocket, which was very tight, and demanded that he hand it over. Minato knew his family had left him a good inheritance, but now he was certain he was being bullied at school. He begged the bully to stop bothering him, almost going so far as to punch him. However, before he could, a beautiful girl appeared in front of them, completely smitten with Minato, even forgetting to attack the bully. As he left the room, Minato was not at all pleased. That day's class was about the Great Calamity. They explained that in 1970, the great sage Shikam Minato sacrificed himself to end the calamity. Monsters had appeared throughout the world, causing despair to humanity. But the pioneer of magic, the great sage Minato, did not give up. He single-handedly defeated all the monsters and faced the leader of the calamity, the demon god, with whom he merged in exchange for his own life. Since then, the calamity has never returned. The professor asked who Minato was, and a student raised her hand to answer that he was the sole survivor of the first calamity, the world's first mage, and the reason Kamui Magic Academy was founded. He was the world's hero and the idol of all mages. The professor thought the answer was fantastic. The student added that Minato was the first human magic user, and that the academy was created to train mages like him. He was the greatest mage in human history. The boy was embarrassed by so much praise, as he hadn't expected to become a national idol. Now he understood that he shouldn't have gone to school, but he had been following the doctor's instructions. He wondered why the wizards had become so weak and why there were no more monsters to scare the world. The class ended, and the teacher asked everyone to attend the practical magic class the next day. Suddenly, Sadaka appeared in front of Minato, reminding him of the upcoming magic assessment. Minato wondered why the man wouldn't stay quiet and decided to leave the room. He asked if Minato's father was also a wizard, but then remembered that Minato was an orphan. Everyone started laughing, and Minato became irritated, turning around and calling them clueless idiots. He was so angry that he activated his magic in the classroom. Everyone was shocked, as it was forbidden at school. Minato unleashed his magic against the bully, and everyone thought he would be injured by the deadly force of that magic. Even after winning everything, the boy seemed to act as if nothing had happened. The girl, on the other hand, was yelling, begging him not to use magic, because an argument could end in someone getting hurt. Despite this, the boy insisted that he wasn't trying to fight, that it wasn't his fault, even after destroying the room. He said it wasn't his problem, and that the other person would understand later. After some time, the boy returned as if nothing had happened, without a single scratch. Everyone was amazed by his power, wondering how he managed to escape such a powerful attack and what was really happening in that room. In the delinquent's mind, he thought a level 1 person could defend himself with a magical barrier. Perhaps the teacher was lenient because he was still a child, but he deserved a punishment to learn respect for others. They were both frightened. The delinquent found it unbelievable. Everyone in the room tensed, and after that blow, no one could move, trying to understand what kind of magic it was. When the boy began to tremble with fear, the teacher entered the room and asked if anyone was using magic. Minato replied that nothing had happened, that someone must be using magic outside. The teacher explained to everyone that there were no magic club activities taking place at the school at the time. Even so, Minato couldn't come up with a convincing excuse and admitted that perhaps a student from outside the department was using magic. He said that the magicians at that school were very enthusiastic and that the smoke had probably come from outside. If true, he promised to find the person responsible, and if it was someone from the school, they would have to pay. He apologized for the confusion and said he didn't want to create false evidence. The girl was amazed by the boy's power, finding it truly impressive. In the delinquent's mind, he simply wanted to defeat the boy, even though they were both just students. From what he knew of their magic book, their level was very low, incomparable to what Minato demonstrated. With that power, they couldn't even defeat a monster, even without a calamity. He knew there could still be many monsters around and that they should check to ensure there was no further danger. Meanwhile, the scene showed old Shibuya, with Minato wearing a ninja-like hood. He noticed the place had changed significantly, but he didn't sense any monsters nearby. Everything was in ruins, but it seemed the police had already removed all dangers. Suddenly, he sensed the aura of a monster coming from afar, along with a distress call, indicating someone might be in danger. From above, Minato realized the girl was truly in trouble. Arriving quickly, he unleashed his firepower and easily defeated the enemies. The girl was impressed by the boy's power and wondered who he was. Minato urged her to be careful next time and not to wander into those dangerous areas again. The girl was curious, wondering who that man could be. He looked like a great mage, but he kept his face hidden. Minato had a reason for this, as he had just reincarnated and didn't want to stand out from the other students. She was shocked to have almost been killed by such a weak monster, which showed how low the level of police magic was. She concluded that the people of that world couldn't even defeat monsters, neither the students nor the police. The mages of that era had weakened greatly. He looked around and realized they needed the powers of someone like Minato to save the world again. Maybe it was time to eliminate all the monsters still roaming the place. The next day, they began measuring everyone's magic to assess their level. They asked several questions to obtain good attribute scores, which are crucial for anyone aspiring to become a professional mage. Minato was surprised to realize that magic could be measured with such a simple device. He wondered if it was truly possible to assess power with something so small. The students were calm, but the teachers couldn't grasp something as basic as this magical perception, which is fundamental to using magic. Suddenly, the girl appeared, asking if this was a good time to talk. Everyone was curious as to why Minato was talking to her. She was a star player at the school, and for many, this was the first time she'd actually spoken to anyone. She introduced herself as Mizuha Yuka, the second daughter of a noble magical house. Minato wondered if she really was a noble, thinking perhaps he was out of touch for not knowing something so simple. After all, she and her family were among the 4 greatest nobles in the magical world. To him, that title didn't even exist in his time, and he'd never heard of that family. Her power seemed very weak for a family with so many generations of magicians. It was truly regrettable. In the girl's mind, she couldn't go wrong with someone like that. After being kind and starting to talk to Minato, he seemed to ignore her. Mizuha wanted him to be more grateful, while the delinquent was jealous that he was talking to such an important noblewoman. Minato wanted to know what the great mages wanted with someone as simple as him. Mizuha grew irritated, and the more he spoke, the more nervous she became. Taking a deep breath, she knew she needed to maintain her dignity as a noblewoman. She remembered Minato having been struck by tremendous power and yet remained intact. Surely there must be a reason for this, and she wanted to ask about it later. Then the teacher shouted, asking everyone to prepare to have their powers measured. Minato stepped forward, wanting to show off his great potential to everyone. Mizuha wanted to be sure of the assessment to see if he was truly as strong as they said. However, the delinquent stepped in first and wanted to be measured first. He had a low attribute, 1 point, and was indeed strong compared to the people at school, but in Minato's old days, he would have been considered very weak. The boy didn't understand if the standard was still the same as it was 50 years ago. The next to measure was Mizuha, who was completely full of herself. Her power was 2,000 points, basically double the boy's. Minato was truly impressed and concluded that the girl was the true force of the school. To him, that was the true power of a noble family, far superior to his own. Minato was irritated by the situation, as she boasted of a power that he considered pitiful. Finally, it was Minato's turn. The previous year, he had finished last in the rankings. Everyone thought he would disappoint, as he had no talent for magic. But he decided to show his true power to impress everyone. Suddenly, the school began to sense an overwhelming aura. His power was so strong that it broke the machine that measured his powers. The thought that something so simple had disrupted his basic power disappointed him. No one could sense his true magical strength, and in his mind, he knew that not many were capable of becoming true mages. The professor asked if everything was okay with Minato, commenting that he was very lucky not to have been blown up along with that machine. It was the first time an evaluation barrier had been destroyed, and in his mind, it seemed like a flaw. He thought it couldn't be a good thing. Then, he began to wonder if the boy's power was a bad thing. The teacher, in turn, explained that the students would be divided into groups for the combat class, and that the teams would be determined after analyzing the results. But at that moment, he really didn't know how to decide. The teacher then asked if Minato could join the boys' group, and Minato accepted without hesitation. Finally, he could relax. Approaching the boy, he said ironically that the two would probably get along very well. Meanwhile, the class was taking place in a place full of ruins and destruction, the result of the great calamity that had struck the place. Shibu had been abandoned by everyone, and from time to time, police, wizards, and monsters appeared there. Therefore, the academics were called in to help, since most of the monsters had already been eliminated by great wizards. There was no need to worry. During that entire time, Minato hadn't expected the class to be practical. He thought the students could easily handle monsters like that. The groups were formed, and even though he could try to do something, Minato wondered if this wasn't the place where a monster had appeared the night before. He found it strange, as he was sure he had eliminated several monsters there, but he still felt many presences. There was no sign of disaster at the location, so he didn't understand why the monsters were approaching them. Meanwhile, the girls were excited, even though they knew it was a practical class. Still, they didn't seem to take it seriously. One girl, however, kept her gaze fixed on Minato, threateningly. The teacher explained that the class would be practical, asking them to stay in groups and not to stray under any circumstances, to avoid any monsters approaching. Minato spent his time observing the group of delinquents who thought they were superior. They just wanted him to keep quiet, stay put, and stay out of their way. Despite their arrogance, Minato was very patient and just wanted them to leave him alone and not get in his way. If he did anything, they warned him they wouldn't be treated kindly. Minato didn't care about the threats. If they didn't like him, they could just ignore him. He thought he was nothing, a piece of nothing, someone no one valued. In her mind, he made no sense, and she couldn't understand why someone like him would matter to anyone. However, she soon remembered that Minato liked her, and this irritated her greatly, even causing her to breathe fire from her nose in anger. The two began exchanging insults, forming a magic circle. There was no time for excuses. The confrontation was about to begin. Suddenly, a huge monster appeared, and no one understood the reason for the interruption at that moment. The entire group trembled with fear. After all, no one wanted to be the coward who couldn't defeat the monster. But then the delinquent leader stood up, calmed everyone down, and said they would defeat that monster. They activated their magic circles, but the magic had no effect on the beast. Minato knew a demon warrior of that level wouldn't fall to a basic level 1 spell. Everyone was terrified. Minato then picked up a rock to try to get the monster's attention. This only angered the creature, and it advanced to attack everyone. The leader of the delinquents asked who was the strongest there, irritated and eager to defeat the monster quickly. But in his mind, he already knew he wouldn't be able to win with that weak magic. All the delinquents attacked at once, unleashing their tainted magic. But the monster stopped everything as if it were nothing. Then, Minato struck back, with a simple blow that felled the beast. Everyone was impressed that he had defeated the monster with just one blow, and began to wonder if this was really the Minato they knew before. Meanwhile, the delinquent leader was irritated, and the girl watched Minato with watchful eyes, hidden behind a wall. Muraka, with her level 1 magic, managed to defeat the smaller monsters, surprising everyone with her power. However, she was also irritated because she wanted it all to be a surprise to ordinary people, and she found her ease with magic annoying. Meanwhile, the group surrounded Minato. As they approached, they realized he was being bullied by the delinquents, but they noticed a unique demon warrior standing beside him. Minato knew she couldn't defeat the monster alone, but as a member of the Miran family, she needed to help. She begged the others to stop it. Minato defeated the monster with a single blow, and everyone was amazed by the boy's strength. They couldn't understand his surreal magical power. They were sure Minato was shy and had no magical ability, but now he seemed like a different person. He didn't seem to be casting any spells, which left them even more confused. They began to wonder if he could use magic without casting, and how he had defeated a demon warrior using only level 1 magic. The strength of demons is measured by the number of crystals they possess, which also determines their ranks. Demon Warrior is rank 5, Demon Captain rank 4, Demon General rank 3, Demon King rank 2, and finally, Demon God rank 1. The official number of ranks is known to all modern mages. Returning to the girl, she explained that defeating a demon warrior required level 3 magic. It was impossible to defeat with magic as weak as level 1. She asked if anyone was spying on the place, because it was nearly impossible for a mage to sense a person's magical presence in that place. Then she asked them to wait a bit and asked what had happened there. Before receiving an answer, she climbed onto the roof of the building and commented that she didn't like those people, who were always asking pointless questions. She decided to look around to see what was going on. Looking around, she noticed that there were many monsters in the area. This was the last remaining demon warrior, but there were several magical beasts roaming the area. She knew that, as the top student, Minato would face trouble because of these beasts, and she needed to find a way to reduce their numbers. Then, she activated her aura and created a magic circle. Its range covered the entire Shibu area, and she cast a level 2 spell, Magic Blast, which sent its blows rippling through the city. Everyone wondered if those lights were shooting stars, but in fact, it was magic. The technique's name was Multiple, and various magical abilities emerged to attack the monsters. Suddenly, many monsters appeared before the people, and she knew she couldn't defeat them all alone. That's when Minato's power emerged, and he easily eliminated them all, impressing everyone. Now, everyone knew there was someone very strong in that world. From up in the building, Minato felt proud of himself, happy to see the monsters' numbers dwindling rapidly. He eliminated all the surrounding beasts with ease, and began to wonder if he had overdone it and used too weak a magic, since it had been enough to defeat them all. With the monsters dead, the students would have no way to continue their progress, and Minato knew he needed to learn to better control his powers. Meanwhile, the professor was puzzled, wondering why there were so many magical monsters there. Most should have already been hunted, but they were all eliminated by a single attack. He knew it had been done by someone very skilled, firing countless magical bullets. It was something extraordinary, never before seen. If that hadn't happened, everyone would be in a huge mess in that place. Launching 2 of those magic bullets would be understandable, but it was almost 6. It certainly wasn't a single student who did it. Everyone was wondering why there were so many magical beasts there. They could have appeared for some strange reason. The teacher saw everything that happened, was deeply shaken, and apologized to all the students. He explained that he had received information that the police had already cleared the area, but didn't confirm it properly before bringing the school there. Therefore, he apologized repeatedly for putting everyone in danger. A girl asked if someone had come to save everyone. The professor wasn't sure if that was exactly what had happened, but he wanted to thank whoever it was. He knew it probably wasn't the police or an official magician who did it. Most likely it was an illegal magician, but he saved them all anyway, so he asked them not to worry. He thanked the illegal magician, and Minato just laughed, thinking it had been so easy to defeat those beasts. The topic of conversation now was the mysterious magic that had appeared in the area. Meanwhile, Minato realized everyone was fine. The delinquent who kept staring at the boy couldn't hide his unease. In Mizura's mind, she knew he was overreacting. It was impossible for someone to wield 2 magical attributes like that. The null attribute user must be someone else, and Minato's presence could just be a coincidence. But that didn't change the fact that he had defeated a demon warrior, so they continued to wonder who exactly Minato was. The delinquents found the situation strange. Those attacks that appeared in the sky looked like lasers. One of them thought it was probably the dominated one who caused it. Another, however, said it was impossible, but acknowledged that Minato had eliminated the demon warrior with a single blow. The delinquent leader grew increasingly irritated and ordered everyone to be quiet. Later, after class, as school was ending, Minato was surrounded by a large group of delinquents waiting for him outside. He couldn't take it anymore and found them all very annoying. So, he asked them to study magic because they were so weak. But at the same time, he asked them to tone down their arrogance because he was nothing but a cheat. He also asked them to stop pretending, saying it was impossible for him to know how to use magic. He remembered when he had no power at all. In Minato's mind, he knew these delinquents wouldn't give up so easily. The leader ordered Minato to follow him, warning him that there was no point in trying to escape, as he would get a serious beating. Minato replied that there was no need to run. He just needed to defeat that man. Suddenly, a girl appeared on the scene, furious about the commotion. She hadn't expected the students at that magic academy to be like this, and told them they should be ashamed of their deplorable behavior. In the boy's mind, he believed it was all Minato's fault, because it was because of him that Yuka no longer liked him. Grabbing the boy's hand, the girl ordered them to leave immediately. Seeing the two holding hands, the delinquent leader became even angrier and wanted to eliminate Minato as soon as possible. Stressed, he activated his power. Minato realized that Guy was really annoying. All the delinquents activated their magic circles and pointed at him. The girl urged him to get out of the way as quickly as possible, but he managed to block the blows as if it were easy. Even with the cheating, Minato knew he couldn't block so many attacks in a row like that. Everyone wondered if he'd been defeated, but the delinquent leader didn't seem to care and asked if they were scared. They'd used magic outside of school without control, and Minato had gotten caught in the middle of it. He made up an excuse to justify it, but in front of them, he saw that the boy hadn't suffered a scratch. Minato was stressed. He'd endured all of this just for that kid, who to him was nothing more than a brat. He thought the only way to cure stupidity was with death, and that it was time to discipline those guys. Realizing the kid hadn't fallen, he wondered what had really happened. Minato didn't care, but he knew he'd involved an innocent person and wouldn't forgive him. He wondered how the kid could be so annoying, blaming him for everything and trying to humiliate him. This time, Minato decided he'd finish him off with just one finger. With his magic circle activated, Minato easily parried their attack and held all the delinquents back. Soon after, he began to feel his weaknesses disappear and fell to the ground. In his mind, he knew he had only absorbed a small amount of their magic, but it had been enough to knock them down. Perhaps this would give them pause. Yuka wondered what had happened. What kind of magic had made everyone faint? She wanted Minato to wait a bit and asked what that magic was, what had happened, because he shouldn't be able to use magic of that level. She also wondered who he was. In her mind, she knew it was a little annoying, but she wanted him to say something before asking so many questions. She was a little embarrassed. She wanted to thank him for saving her, but suddenly Minato left the place without her noticing. He returned to old Shibuya, jumping from building to building. He sensed some auras and had a bad feeling, so he decided to check what was happening. He'd eliminated several monsters, and he was tired of it. He felt it was a bad omen. If it were just in Shibuya, he might be able to handle it. But he felt there were other places too. It was too much for the police and the mages, who were too weak to defeat all those monsters. Minato realized he alone wouldn't be enough to defeat all the creatures in Japan. He began to devise a plan to eliminate them, but first he needed to get rid of the monster in that area. Careful not to attract attention, he began defeating the monsters one by one as if they were nothing. Suddenly, a drunk man passed by, and the monster was on his back, about to attack. Minato easily dispatched the monster. Looking back and seeing no one, he wondered if he was going crazy or just too drunk. The man began filming the entire thing and knew he would post the video online, showing that person defeating the monsters. The next day, the video already had many views, and no one understood what was happening. The scene shifted to the school principal, who wanted to speak with the 3 students. He had received a report that some students were using magic outside of school. If true, they would face expulsion. He wanted them to explain what had really happened. The delinquent said it wasn't him who used magic, that it was Minato who attacked everyone. Deep down, the boy knew he was lying, and he had to find a way to shut that boy up, because if he didn't, he might end up being expelled. Suddenly, the girl said he'd been lying all along, that Minato was being bullied by those delinquents, who this time had attacked Minato. She said she had a gang just to kill the boy. It wasn't clear what the delinquents had done, but in the principal's mind, he knew magic was also involved. The boy replied that he hadn't done anything wrong and told her to shut up. He said she was a liar and asked what kind of person bullies and then blames the victim when they face the consequences. He said he couldn't be called a man and should be ashamed of himself. But the delinquent blamed Minato again, saying he wasn't even fit for the school and was just trash who should be removed. He even asked the principal to open his eyes and stop being so strict. The girl, with a look of contempt, said she would never do something like that. She was completely taken aback and began listing all the boy's flaws. First, because he was a bully. Then, because of that completely unexpected and illogical confession. Minato knew the boy deserved all the bad things that were happening, but it didn't seem right. Then the principal commented that it seemed Tadden and his friends were being unfairly accused, since Minato had only used magic to defend himself. He explained that at that school, students were not allowed to use magic with malicious intent, so anyone involved would be expelled. Surprised, Minato explained that he was the only one who told the others to do something. The teacher asked them both to return to the classroom and said he would deal with the students who were causing trouble. Minato, who worked at the school, hadn't been this angry in a long time. Minato asked what would happen if they were expelled, and the answer was that they could never be considered mages again. This was obvious to everyone, but she urged him not to accept this decision without question. She paused for a moment to think. She had tried to protect the boy many times, especially in class when he started getting into fights, but now she was confused about what she really wanted. She thought he must be a good person. Embarrassed, she didn't know where to hide and ran away, clutching her chest, feeling the weight of the situation. In her mind, she knew she had been reincarnated in that boy's body. She tried to figure out if he had been bullied to death or if it had been a car accident, but she still wasn't sure and wanted to find out the truth. The scene shifted to the principal, who was talking to some people about the student using magic outside of school and that a student had been targeted. But luckily, no civilians had been injured. He asked why they had been called to the scene. The student who had been targeted was Misur, and her brother said he would see what he could do. The principal asked them to send his regards to the girl's father. As he left, he asked them to stay calm, as his father was willing to invest in the school. A man commented that, if what he said was true, Minato must have been very strong to have protected her sister. The girl explained that fighting multiple mages at once was practically impossible and that no one could win unless they were truly powerful. The boy asked her if she thought Minato was stronger than them, but she denied it, saying only that she was interested in him. Also introduced was Katsuragi Ruji, a third-year student in Class S. He was feeling very lazy, and now that there was peace, he had lost all motivation. In the classroom, someone was watching him defeat the monster with swift, almost ninja-like movements. Minato didn't know it was him, as he hadn't yet seen the video. Suddenly, Minato was called back to the magic classroom. The students who hadn't been assessed last time would have to do so now. Moha was eager to see Minato's strength. Upon arriving in the classroom, he realized his sister was also there, unsure of what was happening. Ultimately, it would be Minato who would test his strength. He knew he'd destroyed that room last time, so he should be more careful. When he activated his power, he ended up with a 0 score. A man asked if everything was okay and commented that his magic output was impressive. But his magic attribute was neutral, considered rare, even though his score was the worst in the class. No one understood what was happening, as it was the worst grade anyone could get. To everyone, having a neutral attribute meant being useless, even with so much magical power. The man thought it was all a lie, since people said he easily defeated delinquents. The boy looked exhausted after a simple assessment, which worried everyone. The teacher told them not to worry, as magical power meant nothing at that school. Mizuha knew something strange was going on. Minato could certainly defeat a demon warrior easily. She had never heard of anyone using two neutral magical attributes at the same time, so she asked how he did it. Minato knew the result was perfect because he'd manipulated his power precisely. Fortunately, he'd nailed it. He realized she'd come to the room just to see him, and she admitted she was curious. Suddenly, the girl's sister appeared, asking them to wait. She explained that she was the eldest daughter of the Mura family, named Miruka, and that the young man beside her was Katsuragi. They were both third-year students. Upon seeing the girl's sister, someone asked if she needed anything. She replied that the problem wasn't with the girl, but with her sister, who seemed unable to handle even simple delinquents. She heard she only had 100 magic points and asked if that was true. The girl confirmed it and ordered her to leave the academy immediately. Mizura questioned the reason and wanted to understand why this happened. She asked if Miruka had ever beaten her sister, whether in academics, sports, or magic. The answer was that she always lost because she couldn't use magic. Then, she asked her to leave the school immediately, becoming irritated. Miruka insisted that her sister obey and cried, telling her she should look for a regular school. She asked if she understood the message, which angered the girl even more. Minato commented that Miruka was very arrogant. He noticed she was talking non-stop, without even listening to the opinions of others. He asked if this wasn't arrogance, and she replied that it was just family talk and that others shouldn't get involved. He couldn't understand if it was a normal conversation, as it seemed like she was just forcing her sister. Angry, she called Minato an idiot. The boy knew that forcing someone to live that way wasn't fair, not even family could do that, and that no one should give up on their dreams because of it. She insisted that her sister had no talent whatsoever and could never beat her older sister. In her mind, Miruka agreed with herself, convinced that she was a genius and immensely talented, even though she had never beaten her sister. Minato said he could beat the girl if he wanted. She asked if he was serious, thinking it impossible. In that moment, he knew she was right. The girl became furious and challenged Minato to a 2-on-2 fight, scheduled for 2 weeks later. She wanted to prove she wasn't running away. After so much provocation, she wanted to pursue it now. But the boy wasn't keen on that, even though he would participate to defeat them both. She asked if Miruka would also participate, and if not, she said she would defeat them both single-handedly. The challenge was on. So, 2 weeks from now, there would be a 2-on-2 tournament. If they won, she never wanted to hear about the subject of her life again. If they lost, Miruka would have to leave school. But she warned them that she wouldn't make things easy and that they should be prepared to face reality. Upon reaching the school's roof, she asked the boy to help her learn magic. In his mind, Minato was nervous for no reason, thinking he'd be called to something else, and suddenly this problem appears. The boy told her he wasn't good at magic and only had 100 magical power. He asked her if she was sure she wanted to learn from him. Mizua suspected he was hiding his true power, which was undoubtedly much greater. She was sure he knew some way to get stronger. That's why he said he could beat her sister. Deep down, she knew he was the type who wanted to control everything and everyone around him, so she provoked her sister into fighting him. But, of course, she couldn't reveal that. After seeing the scene, she began begging him to use his magic to help her. The boy, observing the situation, decided to accept her request, but made it clear that she had to follow everything exactly as he told her. If not, he would give up and not change his mind under any circumstances. She thanked him, brimming with confidence. In his mind, there was no way he could refuse. After all, she was begging like that. Now, he needed to prepare for what was to come. He thought that, after all, playing the role of a magician might not be so bad after all. So, they agreed to start everything the next day. He asked if she would go to his own house. When she got there, she noticed how large it was. She explained that her father was a noble mage, so it was normal to have a residence like that. Thinking back, it was the first time she'd invited a boy over, and it made her quite embarrassed. She asked if he thought the invitation was strange. It wasn't ulterior motives, just practice. Now it was time to begin training. Despite being nervous about calling him by his first name, He mentioned that her sister's name was also Amarar, so using her last name might cause confusion. He asked if she preferred a different name. She, somewhat awkwardly, accepted his suggestion. She wanted to start the training quickly and asked him to be patient. But first she wanted him to answer a question. What exactly was magical power? She explained that it was simple. It was the energy that existed within the body and was used to perform magic. He asked if enchanting was a way to program and automatically transform magical power for conjuration. Then he wanted to know if it was possible to intentionally increase magical power. She replied that this was impossible because each person's power limit was set before birth and that this amount did not increase throughout life. The boy disagreed and, with a hint of sadness in his eyes, told her she was wrong. He thought the students were too naive to understand, especially considering what had happened 50 years ago. He commented that magical power resided not only in the body, but also in nature, and that enchantments were merely simple tools to enhance spellcasting. Intentionally increasing one's power was nearly impossible. She disagreed, saying that if it were true, the Conjuring Academy would be gone by now. But the boy didn't care whether she believed what he said or not. He just wanted to teach what he knew. So he transferred some of his magical power to her and asked her to let him know when she felt something. She asked if he could feel her power, and he explained that if she didn't, she would never grow stronger. He asked her to close her eyes and touched her. At first, it didn't seem like it was enough, so he transferred more energy. He found it strange that she still hadn't felt anything, even after receiving so much power. Suddenly, she noticed that her back felt warm. He explained that this was magical perception, the ability to sense the magical power of others. He asked her to cherish that feeling for the rest of her life, because with it she could detect magic and even find magical power in nature. He asked her to make this her primary goal from that moment on. She introduced herself as the second daughter of the Manhua family, saying it came easily to her. But in the boy's mind, she had no natural talent for magic. A week passed, and she hadn't evolved at all. In his mind, she was too slow to learn. The day of the duel was approaching, and if she didn't grow stronger, he would have to face her sister alone. He decided to impart more power to her. He told her to open her eyes, and then she could finally see the magic, the power he wielded. This gave her great confidence, as if it were something natural to her. He began to explain a little more about magic. Now that she could use magical perception, all she needed was time to learn how to control the amount of magical power she used. He explained how power limits worked, how much could be used, how much could be recovered, and how the key was to use magic efficiently, discarding anything unnecessary. Using magic was different from what they taught at the Conjuring Academy. He told her that even if she didn't believe, it was okay. He was excited because he knew she would never doubt him again. Grateful for that, she prepared for the next phase of her training. So he asked her to go away because they were going to do some sparring, some fighting practice. She wanted to test his power. She used first-level water magic to attack, but he blocked it easily. She was surprised he could handle it so calmly. He explained that this was the first level of the magical barrier, something not even her sister could easily overcome. He told her she needed to move while using the spell, or else she wouldn't stand a chance. Even after launching several attacks, she couldn't break his defense. He realized she was using too much energy and making serious mistakes. He told her that if she learned to adjust her power, she wouldn't need to rely on incantations to enhance her spellcasting. She could use magic while she still had energy available. He wanted her to try to adjust her power, to learn how to find enchantments, because once she could control her power, she would no longer need to waste energy on enchantments, something that was too consuming. In other words, he wanted it to make his spellcasting stronger and more efficient. She was scared because she thought they would start too quickly, almost as if her life depended on it. She ended up fainting on the floor. From that day on, they would do the training every day. After the sun set, he went to Harajuku City. He noticed that, despite eliminating many monsters, their numbers didn't decrease. He became curious to understand what was happening. He looked around and saw a girl about to be attacked by a monster. He stepped in front of her and easily eliminated the monster. She then started taking photos to post online, hoping to gain some fame. The boy found this strange, as if it were normal to take photos and not thank anyone for their help. He asked, somewhat confused, what was wrong with the current generation. He thought maybe it would be better to wear a mask next time. The next day they returned to training, but she couldn't keep up with him. The duel was almost here, and although she was slowly improving, she still wasn't ready to defeat her sister.